Okay, everybody, it is 4 a.m. and I figured I'd change my outfit just a little bit to finish Judges, the last two chapters. It was a rough one last time. Thanks for hanging with me. That's maybe the hardest scene in the whole Bible. Alright. Then all Israel from Dan to Beersheba, this is the Israelites punished the Benjamites. Then all Israel from Dan to Beersheba and from the land of Gilead came together as one and assembled before the Lord in Mizpah. So this concubine has already been sliced into 12 parts and sent to the 12 tribes. That's what happened in the last one, right? And it outraged and disgusted Israel so much that they have come together to decide what to do. Excuse me. The leaders of all the people of the tribes of Israel took their places in the assembly of God's people, 400,000 men armed with swords. The Benjamites heard that Israelites had gone up to Mizpah. And then the Israelites said, "Tell us how this awful thing happened." So the Levite, they're probably thinking, well, I don't know. It was obviously a very evil city, right, that would do that to a woman. They said, "How did this awful thing happen?" And so the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, said, "I and my concubine came to Gibeah in Benjamin to spend the night. During the night, the men of Gibeah came after me and surrounded the house, intending to kill me. They raped my concubine, and she died. I took my concubine, cut her into pieces, and set one piece to each region of Israel's inheritance, because they committed this lewd and outrageous act in Israel. Now all you Israelites, speak up and tell me what you have decided to do." All the men rose up together as one, saying, "None of us will go home. No, not one of us will return to his house. But now this is what we'll do to Gibeah. We'll go up and against it in order to decide by casting lots. We'll take 10 men out of every 100 from all the tribes of Israel, 100,000 from 1,000, and 1,000 from 10,000 to get provisions for the army. And then when the army arrives at Gibeah and Benjamin, it can give them what they deserve for their outrageous act done to Israel." So all the Israelites got together and united as one against the city. The tribes of Israel sent messengers throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What about this awful crime that was committed among you? Now turn those wicked men of Gibeah over to us so that we may put them to death and purge the evil from Israel." But the Benjamites would not listen to their fellow Israelites. From their towns they came together at Gibeah to fight against the Israelites. Talk about a low point for Israel, right? At once, the Benjamites mobilized 26,000 swordsmen from their towns, in addition to 700 able young men from those living in Gibeah. Among all these soldiers, there were 700 select troops who were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. So very, very good warriors. Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 swordsmen, all of them fit for battle. So, Israel's just bent on destroying itself right now. And we're about to watch. The Israelites went up to Bethel and inquired of God. They said, "Who of us is to go up first to fight against the Benjamites?" The Lord replied, "Judah shall go first." The next morning the Israelites got up and pitched camp near Gibeah. The Israelites went out to fight the Benjamites and took up battle positions against them at Gibeah. The Benjamites came out of Gibeah and cut down 22,000 Israelites on the battlefield that day. So obviously the Benjamites know how to fight. But the Israelites encouraged one another and again took up their positions where they had stationed themselves. The first day the Israelites went up and wept before the Lord until evening. And they inquired of the Lord. They said, "Shall we go up again to fight against the Benjamites, our fellow Israelites?" They're kind of reminding God, right? These are our fellow Israelites, and the Lord said, "Go up against them." Then the Israelites drew near Benjamin the second day. This time, when the Benjamites came out from Gibeah to oppose them, they cut down another 18,000 Israelites, all of them armed with swords. Then all the Israelites, the whole army, went up to battle, and there they sat weeping before the Lord. They fasted that day until evening and presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. The Israelites inquired of the Lord. In those days, the Ark of the Covenant of God was taken there with Phinehas and son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, ministering before it. They asked, "Shall we go up to fight against the Benjamites, our fellow Israelites, or not?" The Lord responded, "Go, for tomorrow I will give them into your hands." Then Israelites set an ambush around Gibeah. So again, we see the justice of God here. I'm not pretending to understand the numbers. I'm not pretending to understand all of the dynamics or how God thinks or how ancient people think. But one woman, of course, was brutally assaulted to the point that she died, right? And now over 40,000 men on the Israel side have died just to avenge her, right? Yeah, that's also a hard one to understand, right? But if we're told that the Bible is a book that doesn't value human life or doesn't value the lives of women, it's kind of hard to see that in this story, I would say. Over 40,000 men already dead to avenge this one woman. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, it almost reminds me of that saying. It's some kind of a saying or it's just well-known knowledge that a woman's life is often prized so much higher than a man's life. And I think that's just true, and I think it's probably right. Most of us, if we're in a movie theater and we see a woman, hopefully, as men, we are there to protect if danger comes. There's just something about a woman's life that is cherished, right? And that is true today, hopefully. And it's true here, even though, of course, it wasn't in that city, right? So complicated. Anyway, the Lord said, "Go, for tomorrow I will give them into your hands." And then Israel set an ambush at Gibeah. They went up against the Benjamites on the third day and took up positions against Gibeah as they had done before. The Benjamites came out to meet them and were drawn away from the city. They began to inflict casualties on the Israelites as before, so that about 30 men fell in the open field and on the roads. the one leading to Bethel and the other to Gibeah, while the Benjamites were saying, "We are defeating them as before," the Israelites were saying, "Let's retreat and draw them away from the city to the roads." And all the men of Israel moved from their places and took up positions at Baal Tamar, and the Israelite ambush charged out of its place on the west of Gibeah. Then 10,000 of Israel's able young men made a frontal attack on Gibeah. The fighting was so heavy that the Benjamites did not realize how near disaster was. The Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel on that day. The Israelites struck down 25,000 Benjamites, all armed with swords. Then the Benjamites saw that they were beaten. So now we see somewhere between 60 and 70,000 men have died for this. Now the men of Israel have given way before Benjamin because they relied on and the Benjamites saw that they were beaten. Now the men of Israel had given way before Benjamin because they relied on the ambush they had set at Gibeah. Those who had been in ambush made a sudden dash, and Gibeah spread out and put the whole city to the sword. The Israelites had arranged with an ambush that they should send up a great cloud of smoke from Gibeah, or from the city, and the Israelites would counterattack. The Benjamites had begun to inflict casualties on the Israelites, about 30, and they said, "We are defeating them as before." This is just the Bible repeating things to make it clear. Like I said, there's an old military saying. How the military communicates is they're going to tell you what they're about to tell you, then they tell you it, and then they tell you what they told you. And the Bible does that all the time. But when the column of smoke began to rise from the city, the Benjamites turned and saw the whole city going up in smoke, and the Israelites counterattacked. And the Benjamites were terrified because they realized that disaster had come on them, so they fled before the Israelites in the direction of the wilderness. But they could not escape the battle, and the Israelites who came out of the towns cut them down there. They surrounded the Benjamites, chased them, and easily overran them in the vicinity of Gibeah on the east. 18,000 Benjamites fell, all of them valiant fighters. So that's even more. I don't even know how to count it all now. As they turned and fled toward the wilderness to Rock Rimmon, the Israelites cut down 5,000 men along the roads, and they kept passing after the Benjamites as far as pressing after the Benjamites as far as Gittim, and struck down 2,000 more. On that day, 25,000 Benjamites swordsmen fell, all valiant warriors, but 600 of them turned and fled into the wilderness to Rock Rimmon, where they stayed for 4 months. The men of Israel went back to Benjamin and put all the towns to the sword, including the animals and everything else that they found. All the towns they came across, they set on fire. And I think it's probably also noted that somehow maybe Benjamin had become the most corrupt out of all of Israel. I'm not sure that's true, but I think an argument could be made for that. And so rather than, of course, you could see this as vengeance for a single woman's life, but you could also see this as a reckoning towards the wickedness that Benjamin had fallen to. Judgment happens throughout the Bible all the time, like Noah and the flood, right? Now we're at chapter 21, and we'll finish with this. This is the end of Judges. Wives for the Benjamites. And here we're going to see some mercy for Benjamin. The men of Israel had taken an oath at Mizpah, not one of us will give his daughter in marriage to a Benjamite. The people went to Bethel, where they sat before God until evening, raising their voices and weeping bitterly. Lord God of Israel, they cried, why has this happened to Israel? Why should one tribe be missing from Israel today? Early the next day, the people built an altar and presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Israelites asked, who from all the tribes of Israel has failed to assemble before the Lord? For they had taken a solemn oath that anyone who failed to assemble before the Lord at Mizpah was to be put to death. Now the Israelites grieved for the tribe of Benjamin, their fellow Israelites. Today, one tribe is cut off from Israel, they said. How can we provide wives for those who are left, since we have all taken an oath by the Lord not to give them any daughters in marriage? So there are once again how serious oaths are. Oaths are very, very much taken seriously in those days. And not like today, right? Then they asked which one of the tribes of Israel failed to assemble before the Lord at Mizpah. They discovered that no one from Jabesh Gilead had come to the camp for the assembly. For when they counted the people, they found that none of the people of Jabesh Gilead were there. So the assembly sent 12,000 fighting men with instructions to go to Jabesh Gilead and put to the sword those living there, including the women and children. Jeez. This is what you are to do, they said. Kill every male and every woman who is not a virgin. They found among the people living in Jabesh Gilead 400 young women who had never slept with a man, and they took them to the camp of Shiloh in Canaan. These are ancient times, folks. Then the whole assembly sent an offer of peace to the Benjamites at the rock of Rimmon. So the Benjamites returned at the time and were given the women of Jabesh Gilead who had been spared, but there were not enough for all of them. The people grieved for Benjamin because the Lord had made a gap in the tribes of Israel, and the elders of the assembly with the women of Benjamin destroyed. How shall we provide wives for the men who are left? The Benjamite survivors must have heirs, they said, so the tribe of Israel will not be wiped out. We can't give them our daughters as wives, since we Israelites have taken this oath. Cursed be anyone who gives a wife to Benjamite. But look, there is an annual festival of the Lord in Shiloh, which lies at Bethel, east of the road that goes from Bethel to Shechem, south of Lebanon. So they instructed the Benjamites, saying, go and hide in the vineyards and watch. When the young men and women of Shiloh come out to join in dancing, rush from the vineyards, and each of you sees one of them to be your wife. I wish it could be that easy. You see one that you like, and you just jump out of the bushes and grab her and marry her. This sounds like that movie, Seven Wives for Seven Brothers. I've never even seen it, but I've been told that's sort of what the movie is like. Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, I think. So they instructed the Benjamites, saying, go and hide in the vineyards. See, they're going to repeat it again. And watch, when the young women of Shiloh come out to join in dancing, totally unsuspecting, rush from the vineyards, and each of you sees one of them as your wife. Then return to the land of Benjamin with their fathers and mothers or brothers complain to us, and if they complain to us, we will say to them, do us a favor of helping them, because we did not give wives to them during the war. You will not be guilty of breaking your oath because you did not give your daughters to them. Ooh, ha ha ha. Talk about cunning, right? There's a way to get around an ancient oath. So that is what the Benjamites did. Nothing like some good girls from Shiloh, right? So that is what the Benjamites did while the young women were dancing. Each man caught one and carried her off to be his wife. What a crazy ending to a book. Then they returned to their inheritance and rebuilt the towns and settled in them. At that time, the Israelites left that place and went home to their tribes and clans, each to his own inheritance. In those days, Israel had no king. Here it is. Everyone did as they saw fit. And that is the book of Judges, everybody. What an end to what a book. Wild. Lord, what times, Lord, and what dissension and division that Israel suffered from. I suppose we have some idea of that, but not a whole lot. Not a whole lot in our day. At least of those of us who are living in the States in recent history. Thank you for this book and all of the crazy stories, the crazy muddled stories. It makes us remember that you do understand the complexity of our lives. You think your life is complex? Try reading Judges, right? We thank you for that story. And we even thank you for redeeming Israel so that Benjamin would not be wiped away from the promise. You had a way to solve that. Anyway, all right. Well, I'll see you guys in the next one. We'll be starting Ruth soon. Man, we just blazed through Judges. That was fun. Hope you don't mind me saying that. And I hope you have a good day or night or morning or whenever you're watching this. All right. Catch you later.